Welcome back to the Perceived Exertion podcast. Today, my guest is Tenchi. So, Tenchi was on the podcast a few months ago. I'm welcoming him back. He's going to talk about his World Championship experience and winter training and his triathlon experiences since we last spoke. Welcome back, Tenchi.
Hello, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
So, Tenchi, where are you at the moment?
I am in my what Canadians call snowbird residence in Phoenix, Arizona, escaping the weather and the further Omicron lockdowns that most European and Canadian cities are going through. So I'm a lucky man, I guess.
And the weather is much better in Phoenix than it is in Ontario.
Yes. Although it's been quite nippy, so I've actually been shivering when I go bike and run outside and swim. But yeah, it's heck of a lot better than what most Northern Hemisphere athletes are going through right now. So I don't want to rub that
in. For those that didn't watch the last podcast, I'll put a link in to that episode. But Tenchi's a very experienced triathlete, has taken part in, I've lost count how many Ironman and half Ironman races, but qualified last year for, it was last year now, for the World Championships. How was that experience? Do you want to just talk about how that went?
So just as a quick story, I qualified at 70.3 Oregon, which was a new race on the West Coast in Salem. It's like a town or a city of Salem, which is about 1 hour away from Portland. And I qualified there, but that was the race where the West Coast was having a heat wave. So I was running my half marathon portion of the half Ironman in like 34 degree Celsius weather. Like it was brutal. But I was able to qualify for it, and the rest is history.
And how was the experience of? Because it's for those that don't know, the World Championships were in Utah this year, weren't they?
Yes, and then I think for next year as well. And then the Deferred Ironman World Championships is happening in May of this year in St. George again. So it's St. George is the new Kona.
Yeah, and quite a challenging course as well.
Yes, if I'm correct, when they first started that course, it started off as an Ironman, but because it was just way too hard, they had to make it into a 70.3, and then just before the pandemic, I think they reintroduced the Iron distance, and then the pandemic happened. It didn't happen, and then I think that's how it got converted into the Deferred 2021 World Championships, which is happening this May. So there's a rich history behind that course.
It's hot and hilly, I understand.
Right. The last time I raced it was the 2016 70.3 version. And it's funny because it's supposed to be a hot course. It has rained, and it was a hypothermia year back in 2016, and that repeated in last year's World Championship. So I've been not having good luck with the weather in St. George, but I would prefer to have hailstorms over the hot desert heat. So I guess in a way I lucked out twice.
Yeah. How was it? How was the race?
So most people would give you like a very positive, self-discovery type of a story about that, qualifying and racing at the World Championships. But again, I've been unlucky in that I picked up a calf injury 1 week before 70.3 Worlds. So it pretty much was a wash, right? It was just a participation race for me. And if anybody who followed that race, I think through Ironman Live would know that the weather didn't cooperate either. And it was just one big hellish, brutal day.
Yeah,
for me. So,
but a good experience.
oh yeah, definitely. Like I would rather suffer and fail through a race and learn lots than for me to have this perfect race and learn nothing, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very interesting experience.
It's good. It's good, and you must be thrilled to have qualified and for the World Championships and have the experience of actually racing as a World Championship qualifier.
Yeah, it's I worked hard for it and really was happy when I qualified at Oregon. So it's an experience, and nobody can take away that from me. So
that's good. So what have you been doing since the World Championships? You've raced a couple of triathlons, Daytona and LA.
Yeah. So I finished the World Championships in St. George, came back to Phoenix for a bit, and then I was able to rehab my calf injury. It became good enough that it didn't become an issue. So I decided I was supposed to have raced Ironman Waco in October 24th, I believe, on the same day as LA. But I figured I didn't want to push it. So I decided to race LA Triathlon. In October. And then I raced Daytona beginning of December. So, yeah, more or less been active since.
What was Daytona like? Because we obviously saw TV coverage of Daytona a couple of times this year, and it always seems to me to be one of those events that is got to be on your bucket list of things to do, especially with that stadium and the nice bike course. I mean, cycling around the stadium is an easier task. But then again, you don't have any undulations or any ability to stop pedaling.
It's definitely a great course, except that for age groupers, you don't circle around the track the pros. So it's sort of a lie in that sense. Now, if you were a sprint athlete as an age grouper, you do circle it, I think, 3.5 times. So if you want that track experience, you should do sprint. But if you're from Europe, I don't know if flying all the way across the Atlantic is worth it just to do a sprint race, right? So you have to juggle that. But my race went well. I was had the best bike split there, even though there were lots of peloton that was forming. But that's just the nature of the beast. Decent swim, but again, the weather gremlin attacked, and it was supposed to have been a cool day, but the cloud parted during the bike course, and it became really hot. So a subpar run, but I enjoyed the experience, and it was it's definitely a bucket list race for every triathlete to do. And I think Miami is in March, so if you missed the Daytona, you can do Miami. It's a great destination race.
Yeah. I think with Florida, you do have that quick change of kind of environment, don't you? In terms of the climate can change quite rapidly. You can go from being soaked in the rain, and then all of a sudden bright sunshine and 35 degrees Celsius kind of weather.
Yeah, the Floridan humidity is something else. So
yeah,
it's tough. It can be tough.
No, it's great. And what was LA like then? So the LA Triathlon isn't one that I've heard of, spoken about much. Is that what sort of course is that?
Well, I raced LA Triathlon on false pretenses, because on the website they talk about how fast the course is, right? And then I found out that it's basically an uphill course on the bike and the run. This is one big uphill course towards downtown LA, which makes no sense, because you start off at Venice Beach in LA. It's a Pacific Ocean, so the water is just choppy as F. And I also hated the fact that the lifeguards wore the same neon orange T-shirts as the buoys.
Oh,
So
right.
most of us were going off course because it was already choppy enough to begin with.
Sighting off them, yeah.
Sighting off.
Boys.
It was hard because you were mistaking those buoys as lifeguards, and then so that was already tough enough. And then because it was a wave start with the sprint athletes starting after the Olympic distance wave, you had that congregation happening in the latter part of the swim. So you had a slow swim. It was an uphill, hilly, headwind course towards downtown LA, and then the roads are just crap. And then the run course is an uphill. It's a challenging uphill course. So they lied to me, man.
Doesn't sound like one you're going to go back and repeat.
No, but
never know.
Want to visit LA, a racecation, I won't stop you. But yeah, they need to fix the roads. It's lots of potholes, and it was brutal.
How do you prepare for races, Tenchi? So I know I've been in the same position as you, where you think something is going to happen. Like, for example, a few years ago, I had a race where at the last minute there was roadworks, and so they changed the route, and it went from being a fast motorway cycle to a motorway with a diversion for three miles off course down, very treacherous country roads. How do you prepare for the events? Do you go there a couple of days before and test the roads, or do you all your research online? Or what's your preparation for races?
Yeah, so I do the research as much as I can, trying to get the data on the bike and the run course, and then try the projections of the weather, and then a couple of days before I try to drive the course and even ride on it if possible. But again, it's just so different because the race day can be completely different in terms of the time of the day, the wind conditions. So mentally, I don't go in with these rigid expectations that I must swim this time, I must bike this time, right? And even on the run, where you have a better control of your pace, I'm not a slave to pace or power. I just go with the flow, how I feel, and then adjust accordingly. Because I'm capable of running like a sub 140 half marathon off the bike for a 70.3. But last year, all my times were actually 2 hours because of the weather. You just can't control that, right? You can't beat yourself up over the fact that you couldn't, meet your expectations because you're not incorporating the weather and the fatigue and and because I travel for races, the travel fatigue, right? So there's so many different variables that can lead to fast or slow, splits for a swim, bike, and run, and I just can't control that. So, like for instance, at the LA Triathlon, I had to swim in the Pacific Ocean. One of the slowest swim splits, but I felt very comfortable. I felt confident. This was the first time where I, for the most part, I was able to sight well, manage the choppy waves and not get salt water in my mouth. So, from a qualitative perspective, that was one of the best swims that I had. It's just like if you look at the time, it looks like I'm swimming slow, but you can't control that, right? You can't control Mother Nature. So you just go with the flow on race day, and then you try to compare your race based on the conditions of the day.
Well, it's that classic saying of kind of control the controllables.
Right.
These things can't. I've had a couple of situations where on race day, for example, the weather's been so hot that we've been told that not allowed to wear wetsuits in the swim, and the amount of people that were panicking, and quite a few people actually just packed this stuff up and left and said, I'm not swimming. I'm not doing 2 kilometers swim without a wetsuit on. Whereas I kind of like, I think there's elements of I'm stressed about the day going well, and transition seems to be the area that I always get most stressed about. And so I don't. These other external factors like weather and stuff like that don't tend to affect me, because if you put it down to I can't control the weather, I have to expect that the weather is going to be something that you just have to deal with. And so you're there and you've got to just get on with it. Unless, for example, the weather was so terrible that it was dangerous. But it's hard. I think that element of kind of preparing for races is something that you just have to. I guess it differs as well, doesn't it, from the sort of middle distance 70.3 preparation is different to, for example, a sprint triathlon.
Right.
In that, knowing what your bike route is going to look like ahead of the race for a 70.3 is important, because there's so much more that could go wrong in 3 hours on the bike compared to if you're doing a sprint.
Right, and the pacing's different, and the nutrition needs are different, because you could technically get away with not fueling at an Olympic distance, right? If you're fat, if your fat adaptations and how you use glucose is efficient, but you just can't. And you could even screw up a 70.3 and still finish, but you just cannot screw up for an Ironman, right? Your race is just over if you screw up an Ironman. There's so many different details that you have to also look into.
So you've been doing triathlon now for many, many years, and you've done a lot of them. What drives you in terms of, there must be a point at which you have done, you've done everything you want to achieve in the sport. What still drives you to want to continue to do triathlon?
It's a funny thing, because I used to do lots of martial arts and I was really good at it. And I wanted an actual challenge, not some people, I'm going to get hated for this, but how people aim for like a PB at a local 5K park run, they call that a challenge. That's not a challenge, right? That even if you screw up, it's not the end of the world. Whether it's, but my challenge is like, I'm actually shaking in my pants type of, I'm really scared of doing something. And that's how I got into triathlon, because I was just so scared of doing a 70.3 distance or an Ironman, especially as an adult onset swimmer. I never swam in an open water before. And, I've never imagined that I could do the distance. So 7 years in, I still have that fire, because I'm still not really good at triathlons, and that want to self-improve and, prove myself wrong is there. So I'm still the desire is still there, and I get to travel and see different places, meet different people. So the drive is still there.
That's
7
good.
years later. Yeah.
That's good. And so I'm going to say that I'd like to ask you about winter training, although it's probably doesn't apply to you because you don't seem to ever stop doing triathlons. You don't have a winter. And I guess that's due to the climate as well. I'm not encouraging haters against people that have good weather. But what does your winter training look like usually? So we're in kind of, I would say, middle of winter at the moment, although I don't think really we've had a proper winter in the UK yet. We haven't had really cold weather. But in the middle of winter, you're, I guess, maintaining a base of kind of your training. What does your winter training entail in terms of preparing for next year?
So usually downtime, like a rest period, while maintaining some exercise. starting in November or December, depending on when my last race is. And then January, February is really, I guess, the base foundation where I'm getting as much, just base mileage and peppering in some speed workouts in preparation for the speed focus in preparation for the first race of the season. So my first race of the season right now is 70.3 Texas in Galveston, Texas, which I did back in 2019. Very flat course, so really looking forward to that. And then so pretty much more or less into the speed focus March and April, and then things get more race specific towards my A race, which for me this year is so far Ironman in Kazakhstan in August. So
wow.
Dedicated Ironman block starting in June for 2.5 months after I raced 70.3 Hawaii in beginning of June. So
wow,
just
that's
gradual ramp up.
That's an impressive list of Texas, Hawaii, and then Kazakhstan.
Right.
I
always wanted to
anywhere in between.
To
Kazakhstan's getting a lot of press at the moment, actually, for kind of cycling events, isn't it? So it's got quite a it's supposed to be good. So that's a great thing to do. Hopefully travel won't be disrupted as soon as eventually get out of this pandemic.
Yeah, the race, the Ironman Kazakhstan race was canceled the last 2 years. So I'm hoping this year I can actually go.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Race there.
That'd be good. So you're really kind of base level preparation and
yeah.
Okay.
But I do need to talk to my coach this Wednesday for the specific micro, meso, macro level details in terms of where we're going. Because my coach, he was a Canadian professional triathlete since like the 80s. So he's been in the sport for a long time. So he has his specific ways of doing things, not based on the textbook periodization method. So it's a bit different.
How much swimming do you do during the winter?
Well, basically, I'm pretty much swimming 4 times a week now, steadily ever since last January. So that seems to be the main volume in terms of swimming is 4 times a week.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I've really dropped my swim level down over the winter period. I'm back in the pool tomorrow, hopefully for the first time in a couple of months. So that's going to be a shock to the system. But
no restrictions, of course.
No restrictions. Just decided that I needed to focus on other things. Same thing with kind of running training as well. I've kind of dropped the running down. Just I've properly started base week 1 last week. So it was cycling focused last week, but I'm running tomorrow and then back into swimming, and then I'll get back into the three runs, 3 swims, 3 cycle, 4 cycle training over the next few weeks as into base week 3 and 4. So yeah, I just decided to take a break. I've been training for triathlon for 4 years, and it's been week on, week out, 3-week cycle, then 1 week rest, and then
right.
But it's been like, probably 10 to 12 hours of training every week, and I just decided I needed a break. So just took 3 months of just doing what I felt like, mainly strength work, and just focusing on mental health really, and trying to get my focus back. I definitely want to continue training for triathlon, but it all starts here really.
Any races in mind?
I'm doing Weymouth, so I'm signed up to do Weymouth 70.3. I'm going to do a couple of sprints. I haven't raced in 2 years. So with the pandemic, I just decided I just can't I don't want to train for something and then have it cancelled. So I think we're at the back end really now of. I know the numbers are still high, in terms of the infection rates, but I generally get the sense that once we're through this patch, we should be back to normality. I signed up to Weymouth last year, didn't do it because there was all this talk about numbers rising again. So,
right.
So I'm really eager to get back into doing some triathlons and kind of getting my focus back. But yeah, a couple of years out of not doing any races at all has not helped me much in terms of motivation. But once I get that buzz of kind of getting out on the bike again, that's the other thing I haven't done much of. I haven't done much of winter out on the bike. I'm not an all-weather cyclist either. So there's the smallest amount of rain, and I just kind of blame my electronic gears for not going outside.
Yeah,
as you well know from New York.
Yeah, New York. Yeah, mechanical in New York was funny. I think we covered that in the previous podcast.
Yeah.
Freak of nature, man.
So, your first race next year is Texas. That's in May. Did you say?
Yeah, this year. So that's 70.3 in Texas. April 3rd, my birthday. So,
oh, brilliant!
Birthday wishes from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listening into the podcast.
And what other plans have you got? Is there any other plans, objectives, fitness-wise, for 2022?
Well, after Kazakhstan, I'm scheduled to race 70.3 Melbourne in Australia. We'll see where that goes because, Australia and New Zealand has been quite restrictive in terms of tourism. So who knows what variant will come this coming fall, right? That could potentially close down the borders. But scheduled for Melbourne in November, and I'm debating whether I do Ironman Arizona or Cozumel at end of November. And then I actually have a couple of races that I don't want to reveal yet. So maybe we could reveal that later on in like a blooper episode or something. So it's a surprise.
One thing I just wanted to talk about was about we touched upon it in the last episode. For those people that are thinking about getting back into triathlon or starting triathlon, especially with having gone through this period of the pandemic, and now we're in January. There's often you see people at the gym that have now decided that it's time to grab their fitness and work on fitness. Is there any tips you've got for people wanting to get into triathlon in terms of the sorts of events they should be looking for or the type of training they should be doing?
I mean, it's hard to give like these types of advice because everybody's needs and desires and motivation is different, right? I mean, it's the cliche thing is that, motivation never lasts. So you need to have that discipline or your own internal goals or, structure. For me, I started triathlons, one, as a way of a challenge. And then because I'm a type A crazy personality, to marrying my love for competitions with travel. So I think if you create some kind of an incentive, if you want to look good and have a six pack, that's a goal and an incentive. So you have a beach body for the UK summer, which is what, like August or month of August.
It's not guaranteed.
Yeah, which isn't even guaranteed, but it's a very short time period. But I guess having a goal, something that motivates you, something that you enjoy doing as a process, even if you have a hard time meeting that goal, because if I've had an interesting journey in triathlons in that certain goals have not still have not been met. And, it's all, if I was just goal driven specifically, just looking at times and whatever, I would have quit this sport a long time ago, right? But I just enjoy the process of training and, tweaking training plans, working with a coach to learn things by, questioning things and, running ideas by the coach and, learning and getting better and looking forward to the next travel destination. So, for me, just having a goal, something, and being able to enjoy the process and having that incentive helps me stay motivated and keep at it day in, day out for me. But, we all have different needs, desires, time commitments. So I think, ultimately you have to have that self-talk, that reflection within yourself to know what's realistic and what's not. Because I can't motivate you to do, 4 or 6 half Ironmans and 2 Ironmans per year, right? Pre-pandemic, everybody was going to say I'm nuts. But, there's a desire in me because I get to travel, whether I do well or not.
I think sometimes you just have to do it, don't you, as well? I mean, there's many training sessions I don't want to do. And I don't beat myself up if I miss training sessions anymore. I don't try to chase them as well. So if I don't do a training session, I'm not going to do double the training session tomorrow. That'd be stupid. That just puts the body under a lot of pressure. Yeah. But there is a motivation within that says, I actually do enjoy training. I don't enjoy needing to juggle diaries and try to fit it in, and that I find quite difficult. But I think sometimes once you're signed up to something, you should just do it, and it is that, at least when it's in the diary, you've got the motivation to prepare for that. I think what's been difficult with the pandemic is, certainly for me, was that even though I'd signed up to events, I didn't really think they were going to happen. And a lot of them were being cancelled. And I've got friends who, a good friend of mine who I run with, who's a marathon runner, she has completely fallen out with their training altogether because there was no marathons running. And she obviously has the motivation from wanting to complete all of the majors. So when that can't happen, she sinks down into her preparation being one of mental as opposed to physical, and is only now realizing that actually, we might have a chance of having some events that go ahead and aren't cancelled or aren't virtual events. So it's kind of, I think that mental side of things is difficult. I'm enjoying starting from scratch again as well. I've taken a break and now I'm starting from base level, and I've never done that before because it's always been a continuation right the way through the year. So I'm starting small and gradually building that up. So over the coming months, it'll build to the kind of the training where the volume comes in for 70.3.
It's just one day at a time, right?
Yeah, I mean, don't chase it. That's my advice is, don't chase it. You can't, if we have other lives as well. So if you can't do the training on one day, so what? Do it tomorrow. Do something tomorrow.
The secret is that like 80% of the time your training sucks. Even if you got the best sleep and you're having the best diet and you're feeling motivated, 80% of the time the training's going to suck anyway. So, it's just a matter of slogging through it, just one day at a time, whether your workouts are perfect or not.
I'm going to completely blow my sponsorship opportunities, but I got rid of my Garmin watch as well. So I only use Garmin now in the swimming pool. I don't wear it continuously. I now have an Apple Watch. I use that because Garmin actually, for me, creates a culture of continuously telling you about what your fitness level is. And for me, I don't need that. I don't need that pressure. I do not need someone to, something telling me that I need to up my level. So I've got rid of it. And actually it's the best thing I've done. And I did that. I've been without Garmin now for 2 months. And it was the best thing I've done because I work off Training Peaks. I put my sessions in there and that's all I need to concentrate on. when Garmin's saying, you're unproductive because you didn't run at a VO2 max level that is an increase from last time, that actually does, from my perspective, put a negative spin on what I'm trying to achieve. So, and it's not accurate either. So that was my big change, actually, having had Garmin watches for the last 4 years.
Yeah, I had my Garmin watch tell me that I'm being unproductive day after racing an Ironman. Like, come on.
I know.
Like, come on.
I know. I come off a bike session, and because it's sensed my VO2 max is lower than it was the week before, mainly because the effort I put in wasn't a threshold effort. It says unproductive, and then you've got that. For me, that affected me because I just kept thinking, well, perhaps I am losing fitness, and it's not needed. I don't need that pressure, and you can't switch it off. So I decided I'm going to just switch the whole thing off. So that's what I've done. But yeah, I think it's good actually from a mental health perspective to take a break from it and come back. I recommend it. Yep. Well, thank you for coming back on the podcast. It's always a real pleasure to chat to you. I great admiration for you and your and all the events you do and the efforts you put into your triathlons. It's been really good seeing you progress and train so hard, because a lot of people wouldn't. So it takes a real strength to do that.
And persevere through many inconveniences and bad luck, right?
Yeah, this time of year on Instagram is great for all the little, the little inspirational statements that we all need.
So as per the tradition, are we going to talk more about Spice Girls, or is there going to be a blooper reel?
What do you want to speak about? I mean, so Tenchi in the last episode wanted to talk about Spice Girls, presumably because Spice Girls is a British institution.
The best thing that UK has ever produced, right?
It is, yeah.
But and then last podcast we spoke about my favorite Spice Girl being Sporty Spice, obviously, right? Because Mel C's the most talented and the most athletic. But I think a topic that we could go into next podcast is, to this day, I still do not forgive Jerry for splitting up the Spice Girls. To this day,
it was I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. It was the worst day ever when they split up. As big as the Beatles, that was. Yeah. I mean, the best. In my opinion, Sporty Spice was the best Spice Girl. You're absolutely right. But I think as a group, as this podcast is talking about kind of motivation, I think as a group they all had to work together.
Yeah. But it just wasn't the same when Jerry left. Just wasn't the same. And now Victoria's not wanting to be part of the group. Like, come on.
Have you seen the Beatles documentary?
Never really been. I'm going to get crucified for this. I've never really been into them. I like some of their songs, but I've just never been into Beatles, especially with John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
On the Disney Plus channel, there's a Beatles documentary. Right? It's a kind of fly on the wall of the Beatles. It's really good, really worth watching. Actually, I mean, I'm not a big Beatles fan, haven't been a big Beatles fan, but actually, it was really, really good to see kind of their process of creating the work that they did, which was just phenomenal. When you look at the hits they had and their creative process, it was just amazing, really good. But that debate about the Spice Girls, I think, lives on. I'll have to talk about it again sometime.
Yeah, it's definitely a blooper reel episode discussion.
Well, it's great to speak to you, Tenchi. Thanks for coming on to the podcast again. I wish you all the best, and we'll stay in touch. And let's see where you get to.
Thank you, Governor.